Now, Sushant Singh's tragic suicide has also sparked off the insider versus outsider debate within Bollywood. Is there a privileged, cozy club which in a way rejects and marginalizes those who are not part of it? To take this debate forward, I'm joined by Richa Chadha, actor, someone who knew Sushant well. She's written a very empathetic blog on Sushant and indeed the way Bollywood functions. Appreciate your joining us, Richa. And you seem to suggest in that blog that the manner in which this entire debate is playing out is wrong. You believe that people need to create a positive work culture and have constructive conversations rather than, in a way, use Sushant's tragic suicide to take sides. Tell us where you stand on this insider versus outsider debate.
First of all, I'd like to clarify that to everybody that's watching that I was approached to do this interview and I haven't come forward proactively and said that I will offer my 2 cents because I thought writing a 3,900 word blog would suffice. And as far as and I'm only saying that because actors risk getting maligned for trying to do something for publicity, which is totally not the case. Where I stand on this insider-outsider debate is that, like in the rest of the world, the death of Nuance is what is being played out. I am an outsider, and I was hired for my first few films because of which I'm here by outsiders. I have never been favored by any insider club, and at the same time, it is not their validation that I seek because our ideas of cinema are so different. So like I said in my blog, the only difference I find between people on either side, whether they belong to the film industry, have been born and bred here, or are people like me who have come from other cities in order to make a life and a career here, the only distinction I find in that is that some people are kind and some people are not.
Yeah, in fact, you said that well, that there are people in this industry who are kind and those who are not kind in your blog. And you said that people need to create a positive work culture where every department in films is respected and given their due, not just actors, studios or producers. People need to give credit where credit is due. Everybody's payment should be cleared on time. These are the things we should be discussing. So are you saying that there are some fundamental problems with the way Bollywood is structured that should be looked at rather than saying, are you pro-Sushant or anti-Sushant or insider versus outsider?
See, for people who were friends with him, I just want to highlight that in this whole aftermath, the thing that we have not got is the time to grieve, honestly, and attacks on his family and friends have sort of made things worse. There is no pro-Sushant or anti-Sushant club. In this respect, I think what Mr. Shekhar Suman said turns out to be correct. Like, if the family is silent, we should respect their privacy and give them the space to grieve, because we cannot even begin to fathom their pain or how they would feel when they see this news splashed all across news channels. And which is why I want to even make use of your platform to suggest tangible things that could be discussed, because you're giving me prime time out of on a show during a pandemic when a flood is raging, when there's all kinds of strife in the country. So I want to honor that. If we really are serious about wanting to make a change, then I listed out a whole lot of things that can be done, and those ideas should not even be coming from someone like me, you know. I'm small fry in the ecosystem. These are things that need to be discussed. But the question is, are people serious about change, or has it become a battle of egos where, you know, you have to pick sides?
So why is it that you think that this raw nerve has been touched, you know, where nepotism is being discussed, power play? I mean, was it bubbling under the surface and Sushant's suicide has just triggered it off? Or do you think the media has chosen to sensationalize it and reduce a tragedy to a circus?
At the risk of being criticized, because I am here talking to the media, a bit of both. This is an issue that has been discussed pretty much on and off since 2015 or 16. It is something that I have written about in the past. It is something that people who are across the spectrum have complained about. The problem is not in just in the way that Bollywood function. It's just how all of us have started functioning. There's always this excuse to, if you want to show a sensational piece of news, you can always say, but this is what the people want to see. And every discussion has become so deeply bifurcated in binaries that to a sensible person, it just does not make sense. I can respect people's opinions because everybody here has a story. Everybody here does feel like, oh, maybe I didn't get my due. Maybe there was a gang trying to sabotage my career. Maybe there was somebody higher up who I could not please, and such and such. And these stories are across the board. These are from, I spoke to a product of nepotism, so to speak, before I wrote that blog, and I tried to understand her perspective. And she told me point blank, my father's worked very hard to get us where we are, and I'm not going to be ashamed of him or his legacy. And does that not seem fair to you? And at the same time, it is also the press who's hankering after star kids. It's almost like they wait for like the ultrasound images to show up, and they decide that this is going to be the next beat. I'm going to follow this kid, whether it's a toddler or a teenager. And what culture like that kind of celebrity culture, that kind of paparazzi culture, what it does to the psyche of people working within the industry, and what it does even to news. We spend a disproportionate amount of time discussing this. Why? Why are we talking about this right now when a pandemic is raging? We've crossed 10 lakh cases, but yet Rajdeep Sardesai and me are sitting and talking about this. I find a problem with a lot of things in this.
When I read your blog and now I'm listening to you, you should have been a journalist. You're touching, you're forcing us to look at our conscience, forcing us to look within. Do you think the film industry also, though, needs to look within? Forget for a moment, all this this sort of polarized debate that's taking place. Does the film industry seriously need to look within and say, how can we be more kinder people, to use your words?
Yes, I definitely think so. I also feel like there needs to be enough cut the crap kind of moment here. A lot of people who shared my blog are people that are so tone deaf that they didn't understand that some of the references were about them. If you're a producer and you haven't cleared somebody's payment, my blog is about you. If you are the editor of a big magazine and in some way you have abetted the ecosystem by trying to establish an unspoken hierarchy, my blog is about you. My blog is about me too. It's about how all of us are complicit in this. And sometimes when tragic events occur, instead of name calling and sitting back with a bag of popcorn and watching, जब हम दो लोगों की लड़ाई को चटकारे लेके देखते हैं, that is our downfall. And I wasn't raised like that. I'm not going to get dragged into this. Tell me, where are the substantial issues being discussed? Why is there no cap on ticket prices? Cinema halls were already in an existential crisis. Now this whole multiplex versus OTT debate has come along. Why is the question of royalties not being discussed? The music industry has raised their own issues. These are things that should be spoken about. But these are really hard topics. These are massive things that will require corrections over the next 10 years, 15 years. Systemic changes will need to be made. But these are the things that we ought to be talking about. Can't solely blame nepotism when there's so many examples of failed star kids in front of us and so many examples of successful outsiders in front of us. I owe my entire career to outsiders, but then when somebody asks me, do you think you've gotten your due? I keep wondering if I have to define success in my own terms, or should I accept what is being told to me?
Richa, I think, as I said, you've touched a bit of a raw nerve. Both forced people, perhaps in the media also, who sensationalize news to look inwards and reduce every story to a binary black and white. And I hope you've also touched a chord within the film industry there also needs to look inwards.
I
and
know I have. I have, because I have been getting messages endlessly from people across the board in my DMs and on my personal messages by people who are actual stakeholders who want to understand and fix things.
Good.
See, this is our survival. Nothing is going to change if we keep fighting. This is an industry, it's a huge soft power. It is also the source of livelihood for thousands and millions of people and a source of entertainment for far many more. There are things that need to be done and we must do them instead of getting caught between are you with us or against us thing doesn't hold. If you disagree with somebody, you should just be able to say, I can accept that as his or her experience, but do I agree with it? Not necessarily. Everybody has their own journey here.
I think that's a good way to put it. Everyone has their own journey, and I think we need to respect those journeys rather than get trapped into this them versus us debate, even in the film industry. Richa Chadha, for sparing prime time for me, thank you very much. And let me again say that we asked you to come on the show. You didn't volunteer on your own. Thanks very much for joining me and giving a very different perspective to this ongoing debate. And that's what we'll continue to try and do. We don't want to get into the noise. A young man has tragically died. His family is grieving. Allow them to at least grieve in peace. Thank you very much, Richa Chadha, for joining me. Let's turn from